We continue now at the top of Daf Nunam Aleph and Meseches Nazir. This is Nazir Daf 50a. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a brisa in which Rabbi Meir died, and Rabbi Yehuda did not want to see any of the Talmidim of Rabbi Meir because they only came to be victorious in halacha. And Sumchis, a Talmud of Rabbi Meir, came in and he quoted the Mishnah that a Nazir shaves on a mace and a kazayas min ha-mace. And Rabbi Yehuda said, well, if it already says a kazayas min ha-mace, what does it need to say a mace for? And the brisa continues, Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Yomru, people will say, Meir shachav, Rabbi Meir died, Yehuda koas, Rabbi Yehuda gets angry, and Yossi shasak, and Rabbi Yossi is quiet. Torah matah. So what's going to be with the Torah? And so Rabbi Yossi answered the question. Amar Rabbi Yossi said, Lo nitzrucha ela lemeis she'ein olav kazayis basar. The reason why the Mishnah is needed to say that, let's say you have a mace without a kazayis basar. So in that situation, the Nazir has to shave. But the Gemara continues, Vadayin, but still it's problematic. Yomar al Aver mimenu megalech, because people will say, we already know that the Nazir shaves on a limb from the body. Al kulo lo kol shekain, isn't it obvious that a Nazir shaves for the entire body? So that can't be the reason why the Mishnah mentions the entire body of a mace. Ela kedam Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara gives another answer. Rather, the reason why the Mishnah mentions the full body of the mace is like Rabbi Yochanan said in a different context, Lo nitzrucha ela lenefel shelo niskashro evarav. He said that the case is needed specifically for a situation. Let's say you have a fetus, and the limbs of the fetus have not been joined together by the sinews. Shalon iskashra evarav begidin. They haven't been joined together by the sinews. Hachanami, here also that's the case. Benefel shalon iskashra evarav begidin. We're talking about a nefel. We're talking about a fetus where the limbs were not joined together with sinews, so it's not really considered in terms of the status of a limb. It's not considered a limb, but it's considered a full body of a mace, and so the Nazir would have to shave in such a situation if he becomes tummy to this kind of a nefel. And the Gemara continues with another answer. Rava says, Lo nitzrucha, the Mishnah is needed, Ella, for the following situation, it's only needed L'rov binyano, or L'rov minyano. Let's say you have the majority of the bones, the majority of the number of the bones in the body, however, she'ein behen rov atzamas, but again, it's a small body, and you don't have a quarter kav of bones, so in that situation also, that's what we need to say, that if it's a mace, if it's a whole mace, meaning rov binyano, and rov binyano, that's enough that if the Nazir becomes tameh, he has to shave. And the Rush explains, V'nefel shalon iskashro evarav begidin, if you have a fetus and the limbs are not joined together by sinews, dal aver mimenu einu megaleach, on a limb from that body, so the Nazir is not going to shave. Kevin de'ein bo gidin, because there's no sinews, da'amrinan de'einu metami bo'el. There's no tumas o'el in such a situation. Again, the Mishnah was listing cases of tumas o'el. Ad sheyeh bo mashu basar v'gidin ve'atzamos. The only time there's tumas o'el by an aver is if you have some flesh, and you have some sinews, and you have some bones. And then the other answer, the Gemara was l'rov binyano v'rov minyano. Rov binyano mefarish l'kaman. The Rush says rov binyano is explained later on. Shnei shukim v'yerech echad. It's talking about two shins and one thigh. V'rov minyano, what's rov minyano? Hainu chaf beis evarim. That refers to 122 limbs. Afal pi she'ein b'hem rov ha'atzamas, even though you don't have a quarter kav of atzamas. Avol im lo haya rov habinyan, or rov haminyan. But if you don't have rov binyan or rov minyan, eino megaleach ad sheyeh b'hem chatzi kav. Then he's not going to shave unless there is a half a kav. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Al kazayas mace, on a kazayas from the corpse, Al kazayas netzel, and a kazayas of liquid from the corpse. Both of those convey tumah. And the Gemara says, Ve'ezo netzel, what is considered the netzel, the liquid from the mace? The Gemara answers, Besar ha-mesh shakarash, it's the flesh of the mace that congeals, umoel, and the liquid of the mace, sheher siach, that boils. And the Gemara says, Hey chidami, what's the case? If you're going to say that we don't know whether it came from the corpse at all, so kikarash may have it, so if it congeals, what's the difference? What does that help? And ela diadinan dididehu, rather you'll say we know that it comes from the corpse. So afagav de lo karash, so even if it doesn't congeal, we should say that it conveys the tumah. And so the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Yirmiyah says, Bistam, we're talking about a stam situation, meaning to say we know it came from a corpse, but we can't identify what exactly it is from the corpse. Ikarash, if it congeals, Moelhu, then you know it's the liquid from the flesh of the mace, and Lo Karash, but if it does not congeal, Dil Makicho V'neyahu, so maybe it's the phlegm or the spittle, which would not convey tumah. That's why we need these characteristics in order to identify exactly what the substance is. And the Gemara continues, Boy minei Abaya me Rabba. Abaya asked Rabba the following question: Yesh netzel lebehema oe netzel lebehema. Is there this category of liquid that conveys tumah? Does that apply to animals or does that not apply to animals? Mi amrinon gemiri netzel da'asi me adam avol da'asi me behema lo. Do we say that we learned that there's a tradition that there is netzel from humans but not from animals? O dilma lo shna, or maybe there's no difference. And the Gemara says, this is fine, the question is no problem. According to the one who says that the strict tumah, it has to be something that's edible leger for a convert or for a human. But Tumakala ad lekelef. And for the tumakala, for the lighter tuma, then it only has to be edible for a dog. So shaper, so then it's fine, because it's certainly not, this liquid is certainly not edible for a human, and there's nothing to talk about. Ela laman damar tuma chamura ad lekela, but according to the one who says that even the strict tuma, it only has to be edible for a dog, so the liquid is edible for a dog, so ma'ikol ameimar. So again, what's the answer to this question? Is there a category of neitzel or not? And the Rush explains, Yesh Neitzel lebehema, is there a category of Neitzel for an animal? Besar nevela, we're talking about the flesh from a nevela, from a carcass, sheni moach, and again it liquefies, mimetame b'maga uvemasa olo. Does it convey this tumah through touching, through carrying, or not? Tumah chamura, what does it mean, tumah chamura, the strict tumah? That means exactly what we're talking about. Tumas nevelos l'tamei adam v'kelim. We're talking about the tumah from the carcass, and it makes people and vessels tamei. Ad lager means ad shetifsal me'achilas hager, meaning it conveys tumah unless a human, a convert, will not eat it. Shenemar lager asher b'sherecha tetanena haru'uya lager kruya nevela. Only if it's fit to be consumed by a human, by a convert, then it's called nevela. V'she'ena ru'uya lager, if it's not fit to be consumed by a ger, eina kruya nevela, it's not called nevela. So again, it's certainly, this will be disqualified from human consumption. There wouldn't be a question if you say there's a requirement of human consumption. What does the Gemara mean by tumakala? So the Rosh says tumakala means kilomar levad lemitar sochel. All that means tumakala, the lighter tuma, that it's no longer considered like food. Shimtiga b'sheretz, that if it touches a sheretz, lo tekabel tuma. The halach is that something that's food can be mekabel tuma, can receive tuma, and so this will not receive that tuma. So that's not a tuma that's being conveyed. The tumakala is a tuma that's being received. So achash nifsal me'achilas hager ad lekelev. So in that situation, it's still called food. If a kelev, if a dog will eat it, calls man sheru'uya lekelev toras ochel yeshola. As long as the dog is going to eat it, it's fit for a dog. So then it's considered an ochel. It's considered a food. Umekabelas tuman, it receives tuma. V'chein din kol ochel. And this would be true by all foods. Nothing unique here about nevela in this sense. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, come and hear the following proof from the Tosefta. Himchuhu ba'or, let's say you have this nevela, and it's melted in a fire, so tameh, it's still going to be tameh. Bechama, but if it melts in the sun, so tar, it's going to be pure. And so the Gemara says, now if you think that as long as it's fit for a kelev, so the liquid is considered to be a category of tumah, so afilu b'chama nami, so even if it's melting in the sun, it's still fit for a kelev, and if there is this category of tumah, of neitzel, for an animal, there should be tumah. And the Gemara answers, Eimas mamchile, when is it melting in the sun? Basar da'asr, it's already been spoiled. Bechama, in the sun. Kevan da'asr chavalei afar, at that point, once it's spoiled, it's like dust. And the point of the Gemara is, it's not even fit for a kelev, and that's why it doesn't convey tumah if it melts in the heat of the sun. And the Gemara continues, Tanan, we learned in a Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Machshirin, Kol hanitzok tar, anything that is poured is going to be pure. The case over here is, let's say you pour a liquid, and the liquid is tahar, and you pour it into a liquid that is tameh, that is not going to be considered a connection, and the liquid that is tameh is not going to convey tumah upstream, so to speak, to the liquid that is tahar, that is pure. Chutz mi dvash hazifim v'atzapichis, with the exception of dvash hazifim, honey of zifim, which is a thick kind of honey, and tzapichis, that's a batter, that's a honey with flour. Those items are so thick that the tumah will be conveyed if you're pouring, and the item that you're pouring is tar, and you're pouring it into a liquid that is tameh, that will be considered connected and will create a tumah. The liquid that is tahar will become tameh. We will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Amud Beis.